So hopefully we will get the recording out to you folks. So let me go down the checklist of some of the things I wanted to kind of bring up here. I put everyone on mute. For the most part, I think it'd be great if everyone can stay on mute, with the exception of maybe the hosts, the folks who will be showing their garage. We will have a dedicated Q&A for each presenter. However, you can still utilize the chat. If you guys have questions during each of the presentations, we can definitely answer those throughout the presentations. So definitely make use of the chat, and we'll try to get those questions answered as best we can. So I want to make sure you guys know and understand M chapter. So I know a lot of you guys, or you all should be CCA members already. If you guys didn't know, M chapter is a special created chapter we started back in 2020 during the pandemic. And you can add M chapter just like you can add any other chapter in the US. So many of you probably already are a member of your local chapter, you know, whether it's where you live. I live here outside of DC. So I'm also a National Capital Chapter member, but M chapter covers the whole US. So, and we'll go through a few things that's kind of unique about M chapter. But definitely feel free to hit me up, or I will send out information in a second email, hopefully today, either tonight or tomorrow, with some follow-up stuff for tonight's webinar, hopefully including the recording, the slides that we will be going over, and then some more information if you guys want to join M chapter. But M chapter is the fastest growing by far chapter within CCA. We have 1,700 plus members. We started with 0, so it was pretty awesome to be able to hit that 1,600 or 1,500, and then 1,600, now 1,700 benchmark this past, actually last year in 23. We've had an incredible 4 years. We have some really cool events coming up. I'll go through some of those in just a second. So Todd, if you want to bring up the last M chapter newsletter, I can kind of go and give you guys an idea of some of the things that we do. So yeah, if you can go down a little bit, scroll down. I mean, if you just look at our, calendar for, and this is just kind of what we've already planned for this far. I'm not sure what the count of this is, but it probably looks like anywhere between probably close to 50 event days at least here. So we're pretty active. We have stuff going on all the time. We're also a national chapter, so we come to and go to quite a bit of big giant national shows. For example, we'll have a big presence this weekend at Daytona for the big CCA Corral for the 24-hour race. Next month in February, one of the biggest BMW tuner shows will be in Orlando for the Bimmer Invasion show, which is an outstanding show. If you guys have yet to go, you guys need to make sure to try to get down there. Also that weekend is Target 66, which is essentially a big track day down in Miami. The special thing about that is BMW NA will be joining us, and they will have quite a few vintage race cars out there. Not exactly sure what they're bringing this year, but they're always incredible. So, I'm pretty sure some of the ones that we've had the past couple of years, Z4, GTLM car, E92 M3, GT2 car, several, I think a few of the PTG E46 cars. So the list goes on and on. So it's really cool to be out there with a lot of the vintage race cars, and Bill Auberlin's usually there to help drive those cars around the circuit. But as you can see, probably the next biggest event that we have after those two, if you go down a little bit more, Todd, Amelia Island Concours, which is right outside of North Florida. We always have a presence down there at Amelia, and this year was kind of special too. So we just opened this up to M chapter members. On Saturday, there's a big Cars and Caffeine event that's for the local car community. M chapter will be there with BMW North America. we are looking for M chapter members who have unique cars to share at the Cars and Coffee that day. If you guys didn't know, this is the 40th anniversary of the BMW M5. So we are giving some preferential treatment, I say, to M5s that submit their cars. And we go through this whole vetting process. So we will probably end up with anywhere between 30 to 50 cars of people submitting their cars for Amelia. We'll probably whittle it down to whatever number BMW wants us to be at, and we will have an awesome show. We've been there the last several years. It's really cool to be there with so many $1 billion worth of cars. So if you guys want to make your way down to Amelia, it'll be an awesome time that weekend. Better yet, submit your car, see if you can get in for Saturday's Cars and Coffee. I think Corral, we talked about Daytona Corral. So, Invasion. I talked a little bit about Invasion earlier. So between those first 3 months of this year, this month is Daytona, next month is Denver Invasion, in March is Amelia. Just the first 3 months alone, we have some huge events coming up for M chapter. So you will get more information about how to sign up. Let me now get into some of the meat and bones of the presentation tonight. So our MC tonight will be Todd Backerstow. He's helped with these webinars probably, I think, since inception for the last 3 that we did, including tonight. So he will help get the discussions and the hosts going. And then him and I will also monitor the chat for any questions you guys have. So, Todd, you want to pick things up?
Yeah, sounds great, Paul. Hey, we've got a hot mic. But if Paul, can you go ahead and mute everyone again just before we jump in, because it was a little bit hard to hear you there at the end.
All right, we'll do. All right, I think Todd, you'll probably have to unmute yourself. And Jim, get ready to unmute too.
Sounds great. Paul, you can go ahead. You can see the slides again, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds great. Well, thanks everyone for joining tonight. Really excited to host the 4th virtual garage event. As Paul said, the first 2 we hosted as part of the National Capital chapter, and then last year's was M chapter as well as this year. So Paul and I are both members of M chapter as well as the National Capital chapter, and it's been a lot of fun hosting these events, even though it's something we started during COVID. Really kind of caught on. So we've enjoyed meeting, other members, and they're learning about their garages and continuing to host these events virtually. So for those that are new to the event, we just wanted to kind of give you a brief overview of what to expect. Each of the events features members who are willing to share a little bit about their garages and the experience and stories about why they built their garage and how they built it and what are important features, as well as then, of course, stories about their membership in the clubs and the cars. So some of the topics that we'll cover tonight include things like flooring, auto lifts, lighting, tools, other tech, and more. But of course, the stories are what we think really stands out. And one of the things that we notice is that from year to year, it seems like inevitably some sort of common theme ends up falling out for each one of these. So even though they're similar, there's something that's different. And for tonight's virtual garage event, the theme centers around building the garage of your dreams from scratch. And there's the members that you'll meet, they're 2 very different scenarios, but they both had the opportunity to build a garage from the ground up. You'll hear a little bit about a lot of the work that they did themselves, as well as some of the things that they hired professionals for. But really exciting story. So looking forward to sharing those details very shortly. The format will roughly be 40 minutes, featuring the members' garages, followed by 20 minutes of Q&A. We will pause along the way for Q&A. So if you have questions, particularly that's relevant for something that is covered with a presentation, please put that in the chat. We'll stop between presenters to make sure that we cover any of those, and then we'll open it up at the end for broader questions. So with that, we'll go ahead and get to the particular member garages. So the first garage that we're going to visit tonight, Jim and Diana's garage. And so, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Jim here in a minute. And then the second is Krivy's garage. So really excited. Really appreciate both Jim and Diana as well as Krivy for joining us tonight and being a part of this event. So without further ado, Jim, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks, Todd. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our garage. We're happy to share some of our experiences and tips from our journey, which was a pretty long one. We spent a lot of time discussing and planning this garage. And along that way, to give you an idea, we started planning and discussing this over so many years, I won't even mention it. But we demoed the former detached garage that we had here in late 2017. And we started construction in the middle of 2018. And then by mid 2019, we started construction of the second phase that we'll talk about. The outside looked like it was finished to my neighbors about the end of 2020. But really it was another 6 months until we really had finished the interior and most of what you're going to see today as we take you through a tour. Give you an idea of some of our goals and objectives. I'm going to cover things today, some of which are certainly very specific to our build from scratch. Some of the things I'll also try and include, I think would be relevant to those of you who maybe are considering a renovation or modifications to an existing garage as well. But overall, with our goals and objectives, the existing garage that was here was 24 feet wide and 28 feet deep. Nice sized garage, but it wasn't attached to the house. It didn't match the house architecturally. And we had a goal of improving several things, both the design to better integrate into the existing house, but also one of the primary goals we had was to be able to take what was going to be essentially a two-car garage footprint, but have the volume here in the ceiling to be able to support the installation of these parking lifts so we could effectively store 4 cars. That was one of our primary functional goals. In addition to that, we certainly were looking for it to be a comfortable space, one that was pretty unique to some aspects that we prioritize, but things like insulation and HVAC for the benefits and comfort that it had was also very high on the list. If you notice going to the next slide, Todd, I'll highlight some of those things. Yeah, sorry. But basically maximizing the usable space in the primary garage is what we started with. The reason why we kind of had a phase 1 and phase 2 was that once we built and framed out the main garage space, we realized we weren't really going to have as much space for the storage of items along the side as we had originally envisioned. And that led us to conclude that we really wanted to find a way to add on the second phase or plan B with the storage area, which was a space that ended up being about 19 feet wide and 12 feet deep. And I'll go into that with a little more as we go on. But if we go to the next slide, we will show you some of the photographs from the outside, since we're going to really just show you the inside today. On that left side, you see the original garage. You'll notice there where the M4 is parked that we had a stamped concrete driveway that was in front and beside it. One of our goals was to maintain and build the new garage in a way that didn't touch that. And you can see on the right-hand side how we were able to do that. The other part, besides integrating into the existing architecture of the house to match the pitch and style and height of the eaves, we were able to do all those things and end up with interior wall height at the walls of about 10.5 feet. But using scissor truss, the peaked garage height is about 14 feet. We also were trying to integrate into the landscape and some other elements So on the bottom right there, you see a retaining wall and steps. Those were all there before, and we strove to work around and make it work with what we built as well. And then, of course, in the middle, you can see the picture that's very similar to what you see behind me. So going to the next slide, you know, we did have a blank slate that we were working for. So I will say we spent a tremendous amount of time thinking about things that we wanted. GarageJournal.com, I highly recommend to anyone. It's very entertaining as well as informative. I got a lot out of it. I will acknowledge I did not document my build on that. I felt like that would be too much more work on my part. We did act as our own general contractors and did a lot of work ourselves, but there are a number of things we certainly hired professionals to do as well. But we have our fingerprints all over a lot of this. You know, some of the things that you can do when you're starting with a blank sheet of paper, if you will, is things like what I chose to do to leverage these lifts, because we went through the process of analyzing the pros and cons of a traditional 4-post lift, which is what most people use as parking lifts. And one of the things that we really felt about those is that they would take up a lot of space in and of themselves, because the 4 posts are in front of and behind the cars and wider than the cars, takes up a lot of space. And I came across the American Custom Lifts and this M1 design, which is a single post, and realized that I had the opportunity to plan my slab design around recessing them. We'll go into that more later, but that was certainly one example of things you could only do if you thought about it and executed it from the beginning. Other things like doing insulation and the type of vapor barrier before you pour the slab. I also put in radiant heat tubing in the slab. I'm not using it today, but those are examples of things that for a rather small amount of money, you could do it up front and preserve your optionality to leverage that in the future. Also things like running conduits in places where concrete hasn't been poured yet or walls are open. Those are things that you can leverage when you're starting out. Another thing that would apply even to a renovation, if you have open walls, that is the time to really think through and plan your electrical. There are a lot of things it's a lot easier and cheaper to run electrical when the walls are open than it is trying to do it after the fact. So there's elements that we all try and look ahead so we can future-proof and plan ahead for trying to anticipate what we would want over time. So I think with the discussion today, we'll share a little more with that, little more of those facts with you as well that hopefully you'll find informative. On the next slide, you'll see the after effects of the demo in the top middle picture. That's when we were planning to do just the drawing that you see in the middle, which was the 28 by 28 garage connected to the house. After we did the demo, we also brought in a crane and removed a large tree that was directly behind the garage. That gave us the flexibility to build on the phase 2 with the storage room, but that also was the wood that we used for these walls. And I'll talk a little more about that later. Part of our investigative stage, besides things like Garage Journal, we even went to an industry trade show, and that's my wife with Tommy Silva from that event. So as we go on and go to the next slide, Todd, you know, there are things like, okay, you want to have conditioned space. There's a choice in how you might insulate it. I already spoke to the slab, but in the walls, we chose to use spray foam. It has great air sealing properties, and you don't have to necessarily do the same level of fill and R value that you would do inside a house because you're not living in the space all the time, but it goes a long ways towards making the area comfortable. We did use mini splits. I say splits plural. technically this is a single outside unit, 2 tons in size, and it has 2 heads, one in the separate storage room and one out here in the main area is 18K for the main area. It works to provide both heat and cooling, makes for a very comfortable space. It also has a setting on it for dehumidification. They do a fabulous job of pulling the moisture out of the air, which goes a long ways towards what you really value in a conditioned space, even when you're not out here, is the fact that your equipment is much drier, less prone to corrosion, your tools and equipment, etc. So we did some of the future proofing that I mentioned before. We ran 2 50-amp circuits, one to each side of the garage to be able to support electric car charging. Other things that we did were setting up for generator, welder, RV, trailer connections, things like that. You can never have too many regular outlets. Definitely recommend using number 12 wires so that those can all be 20-amp outlets and putting them spaced frequently around the area. There were some things that we did where we thought we might have a cabinet and put them up high, and we later changed our mind. But overall, having quite a few of them and some of them even up high on the walls has definitely proved to be a good move. In terms of the finish elements, again, going to one of the things that anyone renovating a garage may also consider is the type of flooring. Many people would look at this floor and think it's an epoxy floor. It's actually a polyaspartic. It is something that can be done as DIY, but the process to get the best results involves bringing in a grinding machine that uses diamond heads to grind the concrete to get the best bond and adherence of the coatings. And this company that did mine warranted it against any peeling, including lifting from hot tires, and it's held up now very well for a couple years. So I'm very pleased with it. You can pick different base coats, you can pick different flake colors and mixture of colors to get a look that you want. But that's something that we chose that we've been very happy with. The wood walls, as I mentioned, I think they have a great functional value because they're more durable than drywall is, less prone to marking. They're also adds a little warmth to the space, but it also works great for hanging things on here because you've got a great surface, regardless of whether you happen to have a stud in that location or not. Of course, I have a Wi-Fi node out here and other things to make it comfortable to sit out here and have a beverage with friends, to watch TV, etc. But everyone, I think, can make all those choices pretty straightforward. Lighting is key. I have a lot of LED lights in this ceiling. It's broken into a couple zones. The main thing, though, if I want it less bright, these are a Bluetooth LED that I have an app. I can dim them down. But when I want bright, I can have bright. And one of my friends who's a builder made fun of me. He said I was going to get a sunburn, but I don't have any regrets over that choice. We have some additional accent lighting and things that we did too. LED lights, we even retrofitted them to some older antique pendant lights that you'll see as well. So a lot of flexibility there. You can never have too many is my main message I'll share there. Go to the next slide. You'll see some of the images here during the construction. So on the left middle, the yellow background, that is a vapor barrier that was a very thick vapor barrier, will not break down over time. Underneath that, it was the 2-inch foam layer. What you see, the red lines, is actually the tubing that I used for the radiant floor. So for less than $1,000 to do all the tubing and stub it up to a manifold, I was able to give myself the option to add radiant heat flooring if I desired in the future. So to do that would require pumps and additional computer controlled circuitry on that and a tankless boiler. That's more money. and I didn't have to spend that. And I probably won't, because I've been very happy with what I get out of the heat from the mini split. But it was something that I have a friend who had it. He raved about it, and it really was a small amount of money to do it up front and preserve that option. I'm in the mid-Atlantic area. It's been cold lately, but it's not terribly cold here, and I'm not out here enough that I found that anything I'm missing. So you also see in the picture below that the scissor truss. That was before I added on the additional storage room. So that was the gable end before I did that. And I think I just wanted to share mostly some additional pictures, so you had some idea there with the construction phase. If we go to the next slide, it's more of the finishing phases. What I will say here is important to plan your steps in important sequence. So you can see in these images that when the floor was being done, I had already completed the insulation, but I had only done the drywall on the ceiling and hadn't done the walls. So there are different things that certainly play out from that standpoint. Organizing and planning the electrical and the sub panel itself, certainly very important. You can see that there. In the image in the middle where my wife is standing in front of the garage door, to give you an idea, these garage doors are 8 feet tall and they are 10 feet wide, which is a pretty good sized door. Most of the garage door manufacturers don't change the size of their glass regardless of how big the door is. And we wanted it to proportionally look right and make sense. And we valued that additional glass. It's high enough, as you can see from my wife modeling it in the image. It's not like people can look in very easily. So we're very happy with what we got with that. While I mentioned the insulation and you see the spray foam in there, the garage door is actually an all wood door. Many people would talk about having an insulated garage door. The fact is that the best insulated garage doors, I might be wrong when I say this, but I'm going to say around an R7. And I believe, if memory serves me, an all wood door is an R2.5 or 3, something like that. So it's not that big a difference. The place where you want to spend time is actually getting the installation right and doing some extra work with some of the seals to ensure that it seals well. Overall, this garage doesn't have a lot of windows, so the spray foam insulation, I have a very good R-value envelope overall, and it's a very comfortable space. The mini splits don't have to work very hard and really don't use all that much power and energy to run them. And you see them in the image after I received them there. The polyaspartic floor, you see several pictures there with the crew that did it. So this is about 1,000 square feet. It took that crew a very full day to do it. Like I said, they had to grind the surface first, then they put down a base coat, then they put down the flakes, then they put down a clear coat with some traction additive in it. It's a pretty lengthy process. But I got the look that I was looking for, and I got something that has a warranty behind it and is performed very, very well also. The last thing I'll mention on this slide in the top right image is a drain. Most of us have hard surface directly in front of the garage. Making sure you do something to deal with water management is important. The one that I had there previously was not as good, but that was very important to ensure that the water that came down the driveway, even though I don't have a whole lot of fall, was caught and routed away rather than pushing up against your garage doors. On the next, one other thing I was going to mention there, sorry. When I built the storage room, and for those of you, if you look in the bottom left images, I reframed that back wall. The reason why there's no insulation on that one wall is because that is now the wall that is in between the storage room and this space. I put a header across there, so at some point, if there was a desire to remove that portion below the header, you could actually have 40 feet of depth here and be able to park two cars nose to tail in that space. I will tell you that out of all the things I could share, if you have an opportunity to create a segregated space for storage, working area that's separate from your main space, we are so pleased that we did that. It's something that I don't see in too many garages, and I'm really happy with the way that worked out. You'll see in the next slide, or the last slide we get to, that it's not as clean and organized as it was when it first was finished. But I'm happy to have that all contained in that area. So a little bit on the equipment. Certainly, my garage is not really a working garage, and James's tour that'll follow mine will go a lot further with the tools and the aspects of a garage for working on cars. But I do have a nice toolbox that I got used. It's nice to have your tools convenient to the cars and at the ready. In addition, we did install an air compressor in the storage room and ran hard lines out into this space. I'll show you a little more. One of the things we did with that too, though, was that we stubbed a line to the outside of the garage. It's turned out to be very handy. Instead of having to open a garage door, you fire up the compressor, you take a quick connect and plug into the outside connection, and it's there where you need it if you need to air up tires on a car or trailer outside. So that actually proved to be very helpful too. On the next slide, then, I think that yes. So the value you have here is that you get to see some of the images of the single post lift during the installation process. So I thought this was helpful to share because I ended up recessing those about 6 inches down, and then I have a diamond plate steel that covers that space. And so what you see in the bottom left image, and you can see over my shoulder perhaps, and I'll show you on the tour, is that when a car is up, it's a very clean look. There's nothing to drive over because I've recessed that foot. That foot is designed so it can be driven over. So many people, including Doug Werner, who did a prior tour of the garage, they can be bolted to the surface of the garage. And they offer even 2 different versions of height. So they can be driven over. But given the opportunity to design this from scratch, I wanted to recess it and get this really clean look where the only thing you really see coming up from the floor is the tower itself. So these M1 lifts, they have 2 models. The one on the far side is what they call the 4.5. It's about 9.5 feet tall to the column height. And the 6.5 here directly behind me has a 12-foot high column, and it can raise the cars higher. The one behind me is the tower is directly under the peak of the roof, so I had plenty of room for that. In any event, these are American made. They weigh almost 4,000 pounds. So you typically would have it shipped, as I did, to an installer where they have the equipment to offload it. And then you'll see in the image on the top right there, his truck had a small crane built onto it, so they can even unload it when they get here. And I wouldn't have wanted to attempt that myself. I know some people do, but I can tell you, I thought it was money well worth it to have it professionally installed. But they've been great lifts. They're very well made, very solid, and give you the least obtrusive design. As you see in the one on the far end and in the upper left photo, that tower is virtually against the wall. So it's very much out of the way. If we go to the next slide, some of the final images here. So the trees that I took down on the property, I actually brought in a portable sawmill you see in the upper right. We actually milled those right here. And then after they dried, in the upper left photo, I actually took them to the Amish to have them planed and milled for the shiplap that we installed. My wife and I installed all that ourselves. It's both hickory and on the back peak wall sycamore. And then in the storage room, we actually use the flat wall. It's a very good choice for having some additional storage in addition to the in addition to some of the shelving we have in there. So that's really a functional space, though. So you can see now. I'll let the moderator know if you have any particular questions or things you want me to focus on as I take you on the tour. I can pause for a second here, if Todd or Paul, if there's anything you think I should address before we start to do the tour.
So
And I do see a couple people commenting on one of the past friends that you saw in those images. The FD or RX-7 from 1993 was a former resident here. It was sold on Bring a Trailer, so it was actually replaced by the Fiata here. So it's not here anymore, kind of like the M4. But go ahead, Paul.
hey, Jim, we had a couple questions in the chat. So one was from Jeff Cowan. He says, what are the benefits of a polyaspartic versus other floor coatings?
It's my understanding from my research that the polyaspartic will tend to be a more durable coating process. They do have industrial applications of that. And so when you look at what it's capable of and some of the environments that it's put in, it takes far more abuse than what it gets here. And I'll grant you that this is not going to be the biggest test. James would be a bigger test when you're doing a lot of work on cars, but everything I've seen indicates that it holds up really, really well. I will say that the prep work, I do believe, is key. And so the diamond grinding and the correct application of the coatings certainly will play a role.
Okay, we had another question here. This was about lighting. So David Barlown, he asks, did you model the lighting before you put it in? If so, what software did you use?
I did not. I made you can look at what the beam spread is and some other things. These are Halo brand. They do have multiple models and they give you an indication that based on lumen, what ceiling height they're best targeted for. So these were targeted, I forgot the lumen off the top of my head, but they were targeted towards 15-foot ceilings. And then I made sure my spacing was going to be such that I'd really minimize shadows and have good light coverage. These are the Bluetooth capable ones. So again, they work with the Halo app. So you can create groups and you can create schedule. You can do dimming by group. Those are some of the features. The other thing is that they also have color or Kelvin, basically the light temperature control. Now that you have to decide when you put them in. So we went for a fairly warm light option towards 2700 if memory serves me. But that is something that it does allow you to make that decision, but you do need to do it up front.
All right, good. So now that we got all your slides out of the way, you ready to do your tour?
I'm happy to take you on a tour now with my lovely assistant helping me. I guess I will start as we pass by. I'll show you the first BMW resident is actually the e-bike. So the battery assist bike here from BMW I've had for several years. I have to say I've been very pleased with it, and it always goes with me to the track. Working our way down, obviously everybody needs a refrigerator in their garage for the cold beverages when you're commiserating or just celebrating, as the case may be. This is the Matco toolbox that clearly I could be the owner of a Laguna Seca Blue M3 to match it, but I'm not. I have a Le Mans E92. I do have the tires that I swapped between the street tires and the track tires for the E92. What I'll point out here, and most people that want to have a lift will have a need to go with this type of garage door opener. This is a LiftMaster 6500. They're mounted on the wall as opposed to being directly over the middle of the space where the car needs to be able to raise up. So it connects directly to the torsion spring. These do have Wi-Fi capable, an app that they'll work with, and battery backup, and a built-in deadbolt. Very quiet, but the main thing is the functional aspect. If you want to have a lift, then you're almost guaranteed to go with that type of opener to support the cars being able to go up in that space and not have that in the way. And then, of course, you need to make sure you have an electrical outlet that's in that position as opposed to the traditional position where it would otherwise would be. If you'll back up over there, this I jokingly referred to earlier as a Fiata. That maybe could have been a trivia question, but this is an Abarth fighter made by Fiat. They go down the same manufacturing line as the Miata. The body is essentially, the chassis is essentially the same, different engine and different sheet metal. And that is my wife's car that replaced the RX-7. Above it is a 1999 Dodge Viper. This is the very first year they made an ACR edition. This one is one that I bought brand new in January of 2000. This was my track car for many, many years. It got to the point where I decided I wasn't as comfortable risking it on the track, and chose the E92 to replace it for that duty. But I've had that car since it was brand new, and it's got about 28,000 miles on it now. The other thing you'll notice is that for this lift, I chose the diamond plate inserts. You could turn them either way, but they're more useful turning in this direction where you see them more. They can be removed if you're going to do something like an oil change. There's some basic maintenance that you can do on a parking lift, but obviously not nearly as practical as a two-post lift is. But you can see everything about these. They're very beefy and really well made. On the E92, I've had this for a couple of years now. It's mostly stock. It does have a Dynon and Corsa cat back exhaust, no cats. I've replaced the suspension with a Öhlins Road and Track. The brakes are mostly stock, but with different pads and SRF and what have you for track duty. It's been a really fun car. It is effectively what most people would call a stripper. It is a single hump, so no navigation, cloth seats, 6-speed, and the carbon fiber roof on Le Mans Blue. Coming over here, I'm gonna zoom in and show you one of the things we did that was a combination of functional and aesthetic. This wheel came off the factory Viper race car. It was involved in an accident at the Baltimore Grand Prix. Paul, I'm sure you were there. Dominic is posing there. This was the charity auction, but I plumbed one of the hard lines for the air compressor out inside of there, and then used this to coil up the air line, so it's always handy, in addition to one at the back. Coming over here, you'll get an idea of the storage room. Like I said, this space is far more functional and a little messy at this point, but we've got a workbench. I've got a heavy duty cabinet for some additional storage. Another mini split head in here, the stereo mounted in here, but it's nothing pretty. But that's why I like keeping it back here. And I think if you back up that way and go, I think that is mostly I'll tell you the story about the Ajit sign. So most of you probably may associate, if you're an F1 fan, Ajit with being a longtime sponsor of F1 for Ferrari. But I actually spent a few years as a kid in Italy, Sicily actually, and I always thought that the six-legged dog with bad breath was the coolest thing. So I got an opportunity to acquire one of those, and that's why it's close to my heart. Do you have any other questions, Paul, that we need to take?
I don't see any specific questions, but you're getting a lot of kudos for quite a lot of different things. Did you have anything more to show?
I think if nobody has any particular requests, I think that'll wrap it, and I'll pitch it over to back to Todd and over to James.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much, Jim. A great camera work, Diana. I really appreciate it. You have an incredible garage, and really appreciated the presentation and tour. So we'll go ahead. If there's any other questions, please feel free to ask them at the end of the presentation related to the Jim's presentation. And now we'll go ahead over to James. So James, we'll share your slides here in a minute, but if you want to do a brief introduction, then I'll pop the slides up. Go ahead and take it away, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I know it's early and late for all of you, so we'll go from there. Welcome to my shop. My name is James Crevoloni. For those of you who don't know me, I'm actually the Pacific Region VP for BMW CCA. So the whole West Coast is kind of my little gang over there that we're in the process of working with. The shop itself, which we'll get into, has certainly been a bit of a pet project. So I look forward to showing it to everyone. But yeah, realistically, this started as a absolute nothing here. It was just a bunch of trees. So we'll certainly be able to showcase quite a bit of it and go over all the details. So yeah, I guess, Todd, if you want to kick off the slide deck, appreciate that. So Crevy's Garage, my friends call me Crevy, so that was kind of the whole thought on calling it that. The official name is actually the O.L. Crevoloni Memorial Garage, which is named after my grandfather, who basically taught me how to fix just about everything. So that's kind of the overall theme here is I wanted to build a space where anything can possibly be repaired. Some of you may have read, I wrote an article in Roundel called I Am the Warranty, which will kind of explain some of the cars I have and some of the eclectic tastes that I have in tools, automotive, and everything else that's sitting around here. But yeah, so like I said, there's nothing here. Yeah, let me kind of get into it. So exterior wise, the whole goal of it was to build something that was very, very similar to my home. I'm on 5 acres. I'm kind of out in the country. I'm on a very hilly kind of complex area. So there's a lot of technical challenges with wanting to ultimately build over here. But the whole thought was, let's build something that's very, very close to the house design in terms of how the trusses, the outside deck, the balcony, as well as kind of the front facade of the building, all the trim, etc. So basic design objectives, complement the home with similar design. Already kind of talked about that. 16-foot ceilings for lift and storage. So there is an upstairs storage loft. I'll get to that on the tour. But basically, I wanted to design it to where I can pick up just about anything, lift it in the air, but also give myself flexibility with vertical height as I go down the road. Eventually, I do plan on putting in additional lifts to complement more storage versus more mechanic type efforts. Right now, I'm pretty much designed for mechanics in here, but I do have a side of it that we do ultimately park in. Outside entertainment hangout space, that's kind of the upstairs area that I'll showcase here shortly. And then functional objectives. So full-time storage for 6 vehicles without movement. We've gotten that a little bit tighter. We're pretty packed in here because it is the rainy season in the Pacific Northwest. But the goal was to not have to move 12 cars, 5 cars, 4 cars in order to actually put a car on the lift. I love the ability just to pull out maybe 1 or 2 cars, but drive right on and not necessarily worry about it. Easy access to lift, full integration with home automation system and audio video. I'm a tech guy. I love everything automated. The whole house is automated, and that's all tied into the shop. It's a Control4 system for those of you who are familiar with that. And basically, I wanted the ability to, from my phone, as I'm walking out to the shop, hit a button, the doors open, the lights come on, the music kicks on, and everything is basically prepped for when I ultimately walk down here. It is on the other side of the property, so it's walk between the house and back and forth. You get a nice little workout when you come down here. Eventually, as you can see from behind, those of you looking at the video, we're not finished in here yet. It is a shop that is constantly evolving. I built this, we actually broke ground on it kind of end of 21. 22 is when we basically started it, right at the peak of lumber prices when they all skyrocketed. And needless to say, had to slow the roll a little bit on some of the nice to haves, i.e. Heat. So I'm quite jealous of insulation and heat at the moment, although there's an IR heater over there that I can turn on if I need to warm up at all. And then construction objectives, DIY as much of it as possible. I have friends that are in the construction in the construction world, but I also like to do as much as I can between my friends and I and my family, do as much as we possibly can. So if you want to hop on to the next slide, please. There we go. So the overall size, we're 44 feet wide, 56 feet deep. It's 24 by 24 upstairs loft. I basically built the building in Google SketchUp over the course of an evening. I sat there, was sipping some whiskey and built a shop in Google SketchUp. So in the end, it actually is pretty much what we designed in there. There's some small changes here and there. The outside kind of loft and outside deck was more of an aesthetic choice, mainly because when I first built it or first kind of designed it, it just didn't really look right. It didn't have really any outside features that I thought really complemented the property very much. So that was an additional add-on we kind of did after the initial kind of design of it, which is in that particular SketchUp view there. Top right is what it looked like when we first poured the pad. That used to be all trees, not a ton of trees, but a good amount of trees. Between my father showing up on my tiny little Kubota BX, thanks Dad, I know you're on here and retired, which was a huge help. He spent many hours ripping trees out of the ground for me. Luckily they weren't that big, so we were able to take down a good amount of the trees ourselves, saved a lot of time and a lot of effort in that regard. And then the bottom right-hand photo is actually all the way at the end of that driveway, straight ahead is where this particular building sits right now. So as you can see, it was kind of on a slope, nothing really over there except trees. So we had to do a good amount of dirt work, level everything, and get it in place in order to actually start any form of construction. Next slide, please. So overall technical challenges of this particular build, property was on a steep hill. You can see there. It was quite the effort on even getting anything up here. That bottom photo of the trusses, that is my neighbor's house. Mine is all the way up a narrow weaving driveway at a pretty good grade. I forget the exact grade, but it's not necessarily small. So it took 4 different trucking companies actually driving a truck out here to see who can actually make it up the hill to move the trusses. So you can see on the top right photo, we had the larger rig come out with the trusses. We then moved that with crane to a smaller functional trailer. And then we were able to pull the trusses up the hill. You can't actually see it in that photo, but there's actually a large Kubota connected to the front of that truck to help pull it up the hill because he wasn't getting no traction being able to actually get everything up here. So a lot of the expense and time went into physically getting materials here in order to physically even build the building in the first place. So those are out in Kansas when it's nice and flat. I'm quite envious of that. Next slide. So the geeky stuff here, I wanted to build everything as future-proof as actually as I possibly could. One of the big challenges was all of the power, all of the internet connectivity comes from the opposite end of the 5-acre parcel. So there was no power down here whatsoever. So we ended up doing 4-aught, 4-aught, 2-aught direct burial service cable. We rented a trencher, ran it right along the driveway. You can see that in the photos up there. And then future-proofed it. So I did design it where I could have a 200 amp service out here if I wanted to. I'd have to do I have a transformer on my property that I'd have to upgrade in order to accommodate that. So we decided let's bury it and then step it down to 2-aught and then end up just with a 100 amp service to start, which honestly is perfectly fine. Even once I put HVAC in, it'll be perfectly adequate. I don't plan on charging 4 Teslas at the same time, so I shouldn't have too many issues in that regard, but nevertheless, anything you bury, future-proof it as much as you can. We were a little bit too far away from the house to the shop, so I ended up running OM4 fiber between. It's direct burial fiber. It's military grade, really thick stuff, works quite well. And that actually comes from a Cisco switch in the house, and then it dumps over to a rack here that I'll showcase later during the tour. So it's direct fiber connected. It's actually 20 gig, dual 10 gig links running between the house and the shop. Completely worthless, but nice to have. Lighting, audio, videos I already talked to is all handled by DSC and Control 4. And then we DIY'd all the electrical. There is plumbing in here. It's not finished yet. Right now, it's just literally a pipe coming up out of the ground. But I will be putting a sink and everything else in. And yes, everything here we did fully permitted. All the electrical was inspected, all the framing, etc. So it's not one of those. Although I don't imagine how you'd build something like this and hide from the county, but nevertheless, it we decided to go through the legitimacy of actually permitting all of it, which was one of the reasons it was actually delayed. We were hoping to break ground a little bit sooner. Unfortunately, COVID and everything else happened. So it took well over a year for the county to actually approve the permits. And we actually, as of 2 weeks ago, finally signed off on all of them. All the finals are done, and we're good in that regard. So quite a nice feat there to check that off the list for sure. Next slide, please. So as we kind of mentioned, this is a working shop. So everything in here has to be able to fix everything you pull in here, at least as much as humanly possible. So already talked about it a little bit. It's a 100 amp service running down here. At the moment, I have a single lift. It's a Benpack asynchronous 10,000 pound lift. I've had a lot of people ask me, why did I go with Benpack versus some other vendors? I'll be honest, when I was a kid, I saw a lot of really cool pictures of the McLaren F1 up on a lift in the US, or Ferraris or high-end BMWs. And the one thing I always saw was they were sitting on top of a Benpack lift. So it was one of those things where it was simply a brand thing for me. It was so cool. I wanted, even though I think they're made in China these days, but I wanted it to say Benpack on it. And that's ultimately why I went down that path. Functionality wise, it's great. The pads they make are not the most robust in the world, so I need to order some new ones of those already. But realistically, it picks up every single thing that I throw on it, and has worked quite well in that regards. Electrical wise, Jim talked about this a little bit. We are running 20 amp circuits throughout, running 12 gauge wire. There's no 15 amp circuits in here. If you're running wire, run 12 gauge, run 20 amp breakers, 20 amp plugs. It just makes it a lot easier for distributing power. There's 5 different circuits on the main floor on each wall, and then a couple other direct feeders. That way I don't worry about blowing breakers, although we still find ways to do it. And then of course a 30 amp 10 gauge running over to the lift to power it up, and then another 30 amp welding outlet, which actually is not installed yet, which will be coming next. We did a 6-inch slab throughout because I wanted the flexibility of kind of moving around and figuring out where my lifts would ultimately go. So everything is so the entire slab is all 6 inches. I didn't design it to where I knew the lift would go in a specific spot. So if I wanted to shuffle things around or move things around, it gives me the flexibility of doing that. And then we'll get to the loft here in a minute. On the lift itself, we actually did install it ourselves. I went down to the depot, picked it up. We have a flatbed trailer, got it up here. You can see the amount of people in the photo helping with it. It is a big, heavy thing that does not like to move around very easily. And when it does want to move, it's taking you for a ride every single time you try and shove it in a different direction. But thanks to measure 400 times and drill once, we did actually get it installed perfectly, and it's been perfectly fine. So good news for that. Next slide, please. So working shop continued. I told my dad, who's on this, that I would throw him in this. So that is my father. Looks like Albert Einstein. Love the hair, Dad. But the whole working shop thing, as I said, designed for all aspects of BMW repair. So we do all sorts of quirky things around here. I'll showcase it when we walk around the cars. But engine swaps, suspensions, chassis conversions. I just pulled an E39 out of here the other day that we've completely stripped down for parts. Versus buying specific components, just buy a whole parts car and rip it apart and bin them all and save them. I'll go into on the tour some BMW diagnostic equipment. That's one question I get quite a bit. One of the jokes, I think I have a drawer of SAE stuff. I don't know where it is. So I never understood why wrenches have 2 numbers on them when a fraction, and I don't get it. It's supposed to just be millimeter. That's kind of the joke, but there are some SAE tools around here. We've managed to find some of them. But in that particular photo right there, we were doing a rear subframe on my E39 M5, and just the ability to pick the car up, transmission jack, drop the whole thing out of the back, do all the bushings, take the diff apart, rebuild the diff, put all that back together. It just makes it a lot easier to be able to do things under one exact roof versus having to crawl on your back, pull it apart, hurt yourself, feel like crap by the end of it, and then you ultimately don't want to work on the car. So having the lift plus any form of hydraulic to help pick things up is definitely a huge help there. Next slide, please. So general tour, I'll start walking around here. One thing you'll notice in a couple of the pictures on the slide deck is, as my friends know with me, there's always a random helpless BMW on a trailer that ends up over here. Top right, 89 750 IL, named Merlin. All my cars have names. I'll showcase them all as we talk about it. He's parked behind me. This was a non-running car. Now it is a running and driving V12 E32, and I fell in love with the darn thing so much. 2 weeks after I bought that, I bought another one, which is parked outside as a parts car. So, you know, what's the best way to maintain one V12 BMW? Buy another V12 BMW and share all the parts for it. So, maybe I'm not the smartest person in the world, but we'll ultimately kind of figure that out. Top left-hand photo, that's actually a picture of the garage down at the house. So there's a 3-car garage down there, which houses a small gym in the center bay. My dad's E34 M5, the black one there is actually parked on the right, and then normally Sabine, my E60 M5 normally parks in the left bay, but I have it down here just to kind of show the cars off. And then upstairs, I'll go through the loft as we do the basic tour in that regard. Next slide. So kind of the general tour continuing here. So top left is the outside deck portion. It's designed to mimic the house, as I said. It's a great spot just to hang out in the summer. It's nice and quiet up there. There's speakers, there's lights, there's everything. So if you want to, you know, sit out there, have lunch, have a beer, general hangout space. My friends and I will smoke cigars out there. It's really just a nice place to really just kind of hang out and outside and look over the property. Bottom left is kind of a showcase to that. The middle photo on the left was the initial interior SketchUp view. The initial plan was to have a double wide 4-post kind of where I'm standing now, and then have a pair of 2 posts back there. We realized that having a pair of 2 posts didn't really make sense, so I ended up buying a single 2-post, and then eventually I'll end up with a pair of a double wide 4-post, mostly to put the race cars on to get them up out of the way since they're not as used, and pick them up and hide them. So with the tall ceilings, it's facilitated, you know, a lot of ability to move things around and ultimately put cars in areas where I wouldn't necessarily have the space. I saw someone comment on Rainier. Yep, it is Vitamin R, we call it. It is the working man's beer. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, the fridge always has some Rainier in it. And then more loft stuff and a few other photos I'll go over as we do the tour. And next slide. So the cars. Obviously built this thing to have the ability to work on cars. As my friends know me, I am great at buying cars and I'm terrible at selling them. I am trying to turn into a poor Jay Leno, I think is the ultimate goal here with the car collection. But everything I acquire tends to be rather eclectic. I don't buy the nice examples of things with some rare exceptions. I usually buy the high mileage versions that have no service history that someone tried to maintain and gave up on. So, you know, save a helpless BMW, I think is the general theme. So, I'll do a tour of the cars, but this is kind of just a general little list there of what's going on. But a lot of M5s. I'm a big M guy. My dad has an E46 M3 supercharged, so it kind of runs in the family as well. But a lot of nice cars there. I'm adopting them. Yes, I do claim that sometimes. Yeah, so we'll get to that here on the tour section. And I think that was the last slide. Is that correct, Todd? Or did I have one more? Oh, what's next? There we go. Thank you. So obviously, what's to finish? As you can see, there's no installation. There's no walls. There are walls, but there's no interior walls. So realistically, finishing up the interior, I have some deck ceiling work to do, getting some HVAC in here, finalizing all the water, getting some air. I don't necessarily use many air tools other than, you know, I have an air hammer and a few other things. Electric impacts and a lot of just electric hand tools have gotten so good over the years. And I don't even use the good stuff. I use Ryobi, which is fine for most people. I'm not using what a lot of my friends who are in the professional leagues do, is, you know, Milwaukee or Snap-on or anything like that. But for the hobbyist mechanic, even the you know, Home Depot Ryobi works perfectly well for what I use. So just haven't really had the need for that yet. And then tool organization and just better part organization. That's an always evolving thing. A lot of these cars I have, a lot of the parts are in LA. You can't buy things for them anymore. And so anytime I'm able to pick one up, I tend to want to keep a lot of the components for it. Hence why I have another E32 750 now, just to help keep one of them on the road, because, you know, a pair of throttles costs more than double the price I paid for the car, and it came with a whole car. So you tend to think about it a little bit differently in that aspect of how I would actually, you know, store and protect all the parts. And then the last thing is more tools. Every single time I work on something, I'm looking for, if I had a ratchet or a wrench or a pair of pliers that was at a slightly different angle to get in there, I would absolutely love to have that. So more tools are, of course, the constant thing. So I think that's the last slide. I think I'll pause there if anybody has any direct questions, and then if not, we'll continue on with the actual walk around.
Yeah, thanks so much, James. Really appreciate it. Awesome overview. And I think there was one question that came in about selection of some of the tools with an icon tool versus something like Sonic tools. And do you plan to incorporate a wash bay?
So I don't necessarily plan to incorporate a wash bay here. Down at the house is where I have a hot water spigot and everything already set up down there. So that's more of the car washing, detailing area. I am the first to admit I will fix cars all day, all night. I hate cleaning cars. It's not a thing that I've ever enjoyed doing, much to the despise of many of my friends who say I need to wash my cars more. But you know, overall, once I get insulation in here, once I get HVAC in here, I'll probably try to keep them a little bit cleaner. But yeah, down at the house where there's no mechanical work, that's usually where I'll have the ability to kind of clean everything and keep it, keep it fairly tidy. Regarding tools, I'm a big Adam Savage fan, you know, from Mythbusters and his Tested YouTube channel. He has a great statement that was, I forget when he said it, but it was, buy a Harbor Freight tool, and if you break it twice, buy the better one. Warranty it if you have to, but buy the better one. And, you know, I've had enough of my friends go broke with Snap-on and Matco and everything else if you're buying it new, that for the hobbyist mechanic, I've just never seen the need to buy tools that A, cost that much, but B, I'm just not using them as much. So everything around here is predominantly Icon, pretty much all Icon, to be perfectly honest with you. Even the big toolboxes are Icon. There's some Husky here. This workbench I have in front of me is actually from Boeing Surplus that a friend of mine is loaning me, Byron, who's on this call. But yeah, most of the tools are either, all the hand tools are typically going to be Icon. All of the electric tools are going to be either Ryobi or something similar. But yeah, I haven't really had a need to improve or upgrade any of those as of yet. I probably will.
Looks like another question came in about the lighting that you're using. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the lighting, I forget the brand. I think they're, oh God, like Fate Electric, I think off the top of my head. They're Home Depot lights. And here, I can angle this up a little bit to kind of showcase them more. So they're Home Depot lights, 120 volts. They do 0 to 10 volt dimming, although I haven't enabled that functionality yet. They're all LED. I have 7 of them in here. And honestly, I bought 2 and kind of just hung one up on an extension cord and said, yep, that looks pretty good. Based upon the specs of the light, but I honestly just kind of visualized it, put it up there, and realized it worked pretty well. You know, when you're working on something, you want as much light as humanly possible, and I'll cover some of the lighting when I do the walk around. I have wall lights, I have handheld lights, I have all sorts of things like that, just to gain some flexibility to, you know, see things. But these have been great. I had one die on me, but it was the only one that was open box, so I'm beginning to think that it was returned because it was broken initially. But yeah, I think they were at the time about $200 a piece. So not the cheapest light in the world, but I just love how bright it gets in here. And when I'm working on something, I want to be able to see it.
James, that sounds great. Let's go ahead with the tour.
All right, let me flip this over and hand it to my partner, the camera extraordinaire guy. Where's my, come on, where's the button? Okay, why are you not rotating?
Hey, James, I think we lost your mic.
Paul, can you unmute him?
There we go. I got it. Sorry about that. I must have bumped it when I was handing it over there. Cool. All right, so yeah, so I'll kind of start out showcasing, some of the tool stuff, and then we'll kind of walk around the cars. So from a overall design aspect, this is kind of where a lot of the technical stuff kind of sits. So, regular computer. This is a Boeing toolbox. It was actually on the Boeing 737 line. This one I really, really like because it allows me to kind of keep a lot of the individual kind of parts that I like to have. So every single time I strip a car down, I tend to want to organize as much as I can when it comes to what's in it. So nuts, bolts, larger things, plastics, everything down to relays. I have cam gears. I mean, just all sorts of miscellaneous stuff. So from a storage perspective, being able to just hop in here, grab a nut, grab a bolt, or if I'm missing anything, it just makes it a lot easier to actually kind of organize all the tools as they kind of come in. Part of the organization aspect I'm still working on is modules. So this is the module drawer, everything from E60s, E39s, E32s, fuse boxes, new stuff, etc. So a lot of miscellaneous parts in here that I kind of hang on to. It's getting a lot harder to find a lot of these things. So being able to, locate them, store them, and repurpose them. I'll get into it a little bit later, but I've invested a lot into diagnostic and programming equipment. So rather than having to spend, $2,000 in a brand new module from BMW, being able to buy a used one at Pick and Pull for $20, $30, and then recoding it here using aftermarket tool sets has made it a lot easier, especially E60 and E90 CAS modules, which like to die occasionally. So it makes it a little bit easier in that aspect. Over here are all fluids. Fluids as well as some of the storage stuff. It's a GM 5-speed out of an E39 sitting there on that at the moment, just because I need to find another place to put it. But over here is essentially where all the fluids go. So with the lift, happen to have, this is the greatest thing you can ever buy if you have a lift, just an oil drain. Pull it underneath the car, pull the drain plug, let it go, makes life infinitely easier. Otherwise, brake bleeding equipment to do brake bleeds using air. One of the other reasons why I have air. And then just because of just the sheer amount of different engines, all the different oils from 520, 1030, 1060, 2050, and all the miscellaneous kind of components there. Everything up there is just kind of miscellaneous storage right now, gauge clusters, E34 parts, mostly all that. I ultimately do need to start reorganizing, and that'll come into play. The back wall here mostly is where a lot of the actual work for repair will go. So standard Husky toolbox that my dad actually got for me. It's really, really nice actually for what I use it for. I wish it was a little bit deeper in some aspects, but anything I'm rebuilding, working on, it's right next to the lift, it's right next to the car. And so you can take the part off, put it here, work on it, clean it up, whatever you ultimately need to do. I don't really use the back pegboard much for anything, but gloves and magnets for storing miscellaneous things is usually what that purpose is. Back on the air thing, the only air compressor I have right now is just this little central pneumatic, little cheapy Harbor Freight guy. And honestly, for what we use it for now, it works perfectly well. Eventually, I will put a small little room behind the building and then put an air compressor out there that's insulated so you don't have to ultimately listen to it all the time. On older BMWs, this doesn't work as well. The E32 here is a prime example of that because the hood opens either the correct way or the wrong way, depending on how you look at it. But up there on the wall, and I'll flash it on and off for you guys, is a LED angled light from Home Depot. And if you're working on anything, just being able to light up the engine bay is really, really helpful. So it's on its own circuit, just turn it on. That way it'll shine right in the engine bay. Now, if you have an older car that happens to have, of course, the hood blocking all the light, just an assortment of different LED lights. This is great. Another Harbor Freight icon thing. This will sit across the hood if you want it to, and then lamp lights can clip to it magnetically. So I got this icon portable light here. And then if you want to come over here, I'll open this door up on this side. And then inside here is where I have everything from just your standard flashlight to your little mag lights. Everything's magnetic as much as I can have, except for these little ones you can clip on. So these are great. Harbor Freight, I like a lot of their basic stuff. I know there's better stuff out there, but honestly, for the price, I can't complain too much. So everything down to little lights like these, or lights that are on the end. So it gives you a lot of flexibility when you're trying to find the bolt that you will inevitably drop onto the frame rail, which you can't find until you look for it later. The toolbox here is all Icon. This is the Icon 73-inch. I actually just got this one here end of December, as well as the side cabinet here. You know what? It's a toolbox, it's metal. I'm not too picky about branding wise. I think it's as nice as some of my friends Snap-on boxes, but you know, to each their own. But I'm really, really pleased with it. I got the stainless steel top for it, color matched it to the old US General one I had. And the way it's set up is basically everything from charging to programming tools, electrical tools, essentially all live in here. So I laid out a lot of my DIAC stuff that I'll cover here in a second. But everything from, you know, tablet scanners, CAS programmers, battery chargers, all the different diagnostic heads needed for the example BMW ISTA right here, to plug that in. And just gains a lot of flexibility for being able to have everything in drawers. It's clean, it's stored, and it's all kind of protected over there. Real quick on diagnostics. So the oldest car I have is essentially an 86. The newest BMW I have is a 2010, and the newest car I own is a 2016. So having the ability to code and work on everything is very, very critical to me. So for all the basic stuff, I have an Icon T8. This actually just came out. This is a rebadged launch tablet. But this is great just for the ability to do quick stuff, simple diagnostics, pick the brand. It has a wireless Bluetooth dongle for it. And it's just really, really handy for just generic, simple stuff. And it does some light BMW coding if you need it to, but it's nice. It's portable, runs Android. So if you want to put a browser on it and read stuff, it's great. Where it gets more complicated is where I get into these three. I literally have 3 laptops that do this. On the left is a production version of BMW ISTA. I co-own a shop, so this is a legitimate copy of it that we pay BMW annually for. This is for everything on all modern cars, all modern BMWs, program diagnostics, everything. This is fantastic. There are ways to obtain this for free and through some other channels to get it, but it's a great tool. In the middle is my old IBM T30. I have a bunch of these. I got a bunch of them in a box too, just to keep them safe. This runs all the BMW IMPA software, BMW scanner tools, and this is what I'm predominantly using on E39s, E38s, E46s of that era for DME programming, option changes, coding, and basically anything you would do to you know, make the car function kind of outside the normal BMW method. And then on the right, this thing is great, especially for older cars. The E32 750 is great for this, especially for doing throttle calibrations, Vanos tests on S62s, the good old BMW Group Tester 1 DIS platform with the big old yellow diagnostic head. It's an old version of SCO Unix, but this is absolutely fantastic. I would not be able to do a lot of things in here if I didn't have this guy ultimately lying around. Tool-wise, like I said, it's mostly Icon, even down to the silly gold ratchet because it was actually on sale compared to the regular one at the time. But everything 3/8, half-inch, quarter-inch, Torx, Allen, Hex, just about everything you can possibly look for. You know, 3/8, some short depth stuff. I actually don't have a lot of impact sockets, mostly just for, you know, busting off specific bolts and things. You know, exhaust and things like that. But a lot of good flexibility there, and then more just miscellaneous star type bits, oil filter wrenches, stuff like that, just to give me a lot more flexibility on being able to work on what I need to work on. Torque wrench wise, right now it's the big Icon Snap-on clone. You can kind of see here with the screen on it and all that. It works really, really well and it calibrates great. So if I was using it every day, I'd probably want the Snap-on one, but around here it works quite well. Angle gauges, all sorts of miscellaneous stuff like that. I won't go into every drawer, but all the hand tools in terms of wrenches. Once again, Icon stuff. These, a friend of mine actually showed me these that he bought from Matco. These are fantastic. So it is a flexible box, ratcheting wrench on each side. This is a 14 and a 12. Not that you'd use this much on older BMWs. But this is just fantastic for doing trim work, anything that you just need to get into a tight space with. I wish this would lock is the only difference, but that's really the only real con to it. But this is probably one of the wrenches I use the most. Otherwise, standard hand tools, standard ratcheting wrenches, crescents, and then all the BMW fan tools, impact, and then nut drivers and stuff like that. Otherwise, everything is just basically pliers, Icon Nipix. There's some crescent in here. I'm also a Land Rover guy, so the weird, you know, specialty tools to get to those stupid, you know, press-on clamps that you have, you know, with these guys. They don't use traditional hose clamps because they're British. They have to be different compared to the Germans. And then of course, all the different snap ring pliers, all the miscellaneous stuff like that. So a lot of flexibility in terms of tools. I always need more. I actually just got this box, like I said, end of December. So I'm still outfitting it and kind of going through things. If we head over here, let's actually talk cars a little bit. So already mentioned it. So this is the 89 750 named Merlin, of course, after the old Merlin V12. It was in, I believe, the P51 and a few others. This car, I've always wanted a V12 car. I initially kind of wanted a Jaguar V12 because I'm a special kind of idiot, but I decided that, you know, this kind of popped up and I just absolutely fell in love with how this thing drives. It's such a smooth engine. It's just, it's a big boat. It's a big German luxury barge from the late 80s. So everything down to, you know, the mirror auto dips, not that you would expect that in the 80s, but that was a cool kind of feature that it had. And just a lot of fun car. And then the story on the wheels, I get to refinish them, but these are Enki 92s, and my father actually bought these brand new for my mom's E28 528E. That car got wrecked. We ended up saving the wheels, and those were going to go to actually a yard sale at the time. And I saw them, and I said, no, we're keeping those. Those went on my E28 for a period of time. Got rid of it. They sat in the back 40, and then now they're on this. So these have been wheels that have been passed down generations, apparently, even though you can still buy them brand new from Enki, actually, which is kind of cool. Over here is E30 corner. So the red one is actually a friend of mine's. It's in for some miscellaneous maintenance. The Decker car is my roommate Jeff's car, basically built to be a track car. Tucked away on the other side is my 87 325 IS Pro 3 car, kind of hard to get to. Maybe if you want to walk through here. That is a full race car, competition race car. It's completely legal in a ICSCC Pro 3. Absolute blast to drive. I haven't driven it in a while, so I need to definitely get back to that. Continue over here, tucked against the wall. You can tell it's winter because all the E30s are kind of parked. That is the first car I ever owned. It started life as an 86 automatic Etta. It is now a 86 full MTEC 1 Euro bumpers, 2.8 liter M20 stroker, full houndstooth interior, Alpina reps on it. It's a wonderful car. I built it when I was a lot younger, so the suspension is terrible. It's too low, and I'll name something else about how it's not as fun to drive as it used to be. But E30 M3 steering rack, gauge cluster, oil temp works, all that fun stuff. But just a really, really cool car. I'm happy I built it when I did because you can't find the parts for it anymore. This is Max. So Max is an 88 E30 Touring Diamond Schwartz car. Pretty much completely original with the exception of we did put the color edition interior in it that I had redone and just springs and shocks because the old ones were done. From what we can tell, this is the first E30 Touring that was legally imported into the United States under the federalization law. So you didn't have to get the car federalized. A buddy of mine, actually the owner of this car here, we flew to Germany, worked with another friend of mine over there. We actually bought the car up in Cologne. He did a timing belt on it for me. We joined him. We did 2,500 miles in this car in Europe, basically did European delivery in it. It's done 9 laps to the Nürburgring. It's done an hour and a half on the Nürburgring GP track. It's been to Monaco. It's been to Czech Republic. It's been all over the place. It's a fantastic car to drive. Probably my favorite car in the collection. Just because it's an honest original car, original paint, super nice car. The interior here, kind of peek at it, just do this, is all the Daytona violet interior. So this was all torn up when I got it, so I had a local upholsterer redo it. And there's a company, I think it's called Reveal or something like that, that does repop upholstery for Porsche, Audi, and BMW, and they happen to recreate this pattern. And so we were able to redo the seat. So this seat here, the driver's seat, has completely been redone. The passenger is original. And other than a little bit of a delta on the stitching, they look very, very similar. So really, really fun car to drive. Still has the tape deck in it, the Euro clock, but just a nice, fun one. This is what started life as a 92 525i automatic full of mold. And earlier, in a few years prior, I picked up a 93 T-boned M5 and combined them. So this is a full Dynon M5 underneath, 3.6 liter S38. It's got the Brembo monoblock calipers on it, all Bilstein suspension, Dynon springs, Dynon sways, Dynon ship, the 3.8 cam gear. This is a hoot to drive. This is such a cool car. I call it the derelict because I never painted it. Other than I did have the hood repainted because it was so bad I had to. But it's just a fun car that everyone kind of thinks is a poser. I mean, the paint on it's absolutely terrible. It's all chipping away. The interior doesn't match. There's the white dub seats from the E34 in it, but you know, overall, it's just original. You know, it's a fun kind of car there. More kind of just general parking storage. Of course, we're now underneath the loft. I'll take us upstairs there in a second. This is my roommate's car. It is 740 Sporty Shorty, which is now a M7 rep. He's in the process of designing, kind of catting up a new intake for it. But it's a full 6-speed swap, S62 swap. Absolute blast to drive. We built this one quite a few years ago initially. A E38 with an S62 is a wonderful thing. It drives like it's factory. It's a super, super nice car. This is ONM5. Not really too much to say about it. I originally bought this car to have as a parts car to put into my 99 540i wagon. And then like any mistake on a parts car, it was horrific. It was leaking fuel. It tried to kill me numerous times between brake failures, clutch issues, you name it. And I fell in love with it like a mistake and decided to keep it and put it back together. So now it's been completely refreshed. All the suspension's been redone. The engine's all nice and happy now. New clutch, all that. And it drives just like it should with 150,000 miles on it. But just a nice fun car to drive. So we're underneath the loft right now. Lighting wise under here, I wish I went a little bit brighter. These are just standard cans. The only reason I wish I went brighter is mainly because it is a little bit dark, obviously, now that it's dark outside. But I don't do any work under here, so it's actually not too bad. But just gives a lot of nice flexibility for being able to, have some general lighting under here. Garage doors and all that, we covered those a little bit earlier on the previous tour, but same LiftMaster units. These are the 8500Ws. I have 3 of them. They work great. They're fantastic. They're quiet. You can remotely unlock and lock them. And they're side load, so there's nothing directly underneath the nothing above the door, so you get a lot more vertical height on it, which makes life a lot easier. And then over here, final 2 cars, then we'll go upstairs. 99 540 wagon. This was originally going to become an M5 wagon. Now it's probably going to become an M Sport 6-speed wagon. Already have the 6-speed for it to swap in. This is, in my opinion, one of the best daily driver BMWs you can possibly buy. Other than the fact that it's an M62, so it's a little thirsty. It's just the E39 has always been referred to as a car that just handles beautifully, rides wonderfully. In fact, a lot of suspension geometry on modern cars is based off what BMW did on the E39. So super fun car, almost has 200,000 miles on it. Still original transmission, original engine. Just drives really, really nice. It's a lot of fun. M parallels on it, of course. And then the final car to kind of showcase in here before we go upstairs and kind of go over storage and loft. This is Sabine. This is probably one of the nicest BMWs I've ever bought. It's 2010. It's 6-speed manual, exactly what I wanted. I bought it with 40,000 miles on it. It has over 80,000 miles on it now. All the way down to the license plate. Sabine Schmidt, who was the driver of the Ring Taxi, who passed away quite a few years ago. But just one of the best engine sounds on the world, and one of the last just raw M engines before they started putting turbos on everything and building with the S63s and so forth. So super, super fun car there. While we're on this side, obviously we've kind of covered tools, general kind of storage items like that. Everything over here is mostly just where all the electrical lives. I kind of covered that. Beverages, cold beverages, of course, have been discussed. So 2 kegerators are over here. This one's still functioning. It does get cold in here, so I got to clean these off a bit. But nice little setup here where if I need to take care of that. My water line is actually right now just coming into the corner there. So eventually this section over here will become a sink and a few other areas to be able to clean parts, kind of, tidy things up as necessary. All of the electrical service comes in here. Just a standard 100 amp GE panel. See all the permitting stickers and stuff on it. GFCI is all on the main floor due to code compliance. Main breaker for the lift. This isn't wired in yet, that's why it's taped off. If it was easy to pop it open, I'd show the wiring. I saw someone comment earlier about nice wiring. I'm equally as picky. It has to be tucked in there clean and just to be able to be serviceable and look fairly nice. Then some miscellaneous circuits. I don't own an electric car. A friend of mine did, and he actually was about to throw this away and said, "Here, have it." So I haven't wired it in or done anything with it yet, but a buddy of mine just bought one of those 4xe Jeeps, so I think we'll be able to put it to use, and at least he can top off when he's over here. Let's head upstairs real quick, and that'll kind of be the last tour area. So the whole point of building the upstairs was A, I really wanted to have some storage, but B, the ability just to kind of get stuff out of the way that you're not necessarily using as much. So this is right now pretty much a mess because it's a functioning shop and we've been in construction mode constantly. So up here is where basically everything kind of ends up. So everything down to spare E39 seats, piles, E39 parts, E32 parts, you name it, they're all up here. Miscellaneous construction equipment to actually build the shop. Here's the big old spool wire, the excess we had that we ran from the house down here. My buddy has a bunch of mountain bikes, so those are all tucked in there. And then just a bunch of the yellow Costco lidded bins, or the yellow lids, which are great for just miscellaneous parts storage, components. I'm in the process right now of hopefully leveraging a inventory system that's barcode based, so I can actually just put a bunch of parts in a bin, tag the bin, and then I know bin 5 has E39 ECUs in it, and I can just pull the bin, grab the part, and put it back. Just because there's so many parts I'm trying to ultimately kind of collect. Going over here, just more construction equipment, etc. Welder, more seats. Going back to tech a little bit, so this is the main distribution rack that runs the shop, as well as running all the audio system, video systems, etc. Just an APC net shelter mounted to the wall. And then inside here, everything to do with the automation controllers. I have not cleaned up the wiring yet, so judge me because I judge myself. And so everything fiber that comes in from the house, fiber that goes to my wireless controller. It's all Cisco access points around here. I'm in the enterprise IT field, so I tend to use older enterprise gear just because I like it, I trust it. But everything down to the controller, HDMI distribution matrix, so I can move different signals to different TVs, the audio amplifiers, as well as the main catalyst switch that runs everything there. Little Apple TV. There's 2 Apple TVs in here to run the TVs. Keeps it pretty simple. And then just a old surplus server rack I got that has my wireless controller, some backup servers, some things for some automation stuff for the house. And then out here is probably one of my favorite spots in the summer. So this is the outside deck. And right now it's obviously cold and dark, but looking directly across is where the house is, which I believe there's a UPS truck or somebody out there. And then, everything down here, this is all TimberTech decking. So it's all synthetic, fake, plastic, quote unquote decking. But it works fairly well. It doesn't necessarily fade, or I don't really need to worry about maintaining it. And then all the railings are basically copies of what the house is set up with. They're a little bit different, but everything down to all of the metal poles to, kind of give it that nice kind of industrial look. As well as just all the different woodwork, the huge glulam beams, all the different lighting components up here, and stuff like that, which ultimately makes it work. Everything down to the lighting is all dimmable out here as well. Speakers outside right here. This will eventually either be cedar or pine TNG up there. I didn't put any of it in yet because I had to get the electrical inspected. I couldn't cover it. But now all the electrical is inspected, that'll probably be one of my next projects coming up in a month or two, is to cover all that and kind of complete it. But coming back inside, honestly, that is probably the core of it. Looking down here real quick, this is probably the easiest place to see it. But just kind of the overall view of how everything is basically laid out. So, eventually on the right-hand side, I would like to put a double post, 4-post over there. So both those race cars can be up in the air, and then I can tuck 2 more E30s underneath it to kind of gain some space. But otherwise, this is kind of the general layout. TVs, these are 65, 70 inch, something like that. They're Panasonic industrial TVs I picked up from a surplus vendor for $200 a piece. And they're only 1080p. They're made out of metal. They're heavier than hell. But they're just really, really handy, just the ability to just have something distributed. So right now I just have the Formula 1 Monaco race on it. And then directly above the toolbox, which is kind of hard to see, with the bend pack lift in the middle, is another TV, and that is mostly for when I'm doing electrical diagrams or anything I want to be able to have on the screen. That is actually just a mirror of what is on the Mac on my desk. So that way I can just send it all up there. So if I want to look up at a screen, look at what's being diagnosed, it all basically functions in that regard. But yeah, that is basically the tour. There's a million little things that I've learned along the way, but you know, realistically, everything is more expensive than you think it is, significantly more expensive than you think it is. Everything will take 4 times as long. And the only person who will ever be on time from the county is the county assessor to come and see how much more money you have to pay in taxes. That's the one thing I learned, is everyone else was late, but he would always show up as early as humanly possible. So yeah, I think Todd, take it back to you. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thanks, James. Phenomenal tour and presentation. Jim, same to you as well. I know we're well over time, but you know, we still have a lot of participants on, so appreciate everyone sticking with us for these awesome tours. So we're going to go ahead and open it up to Q&A. Paul, is there any other topics or comments that you want to make before we take any other Q&A?
No, not really. A lot of good chat going on in the chat box, though. But I didn't see any questions. So I think, Todd, we're good to go. Let's just go to Q&A. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, I can show the slide if you want, or we can just open it up to any questions that come up. So, Paul, do you want people to continue to add those to the chat, or should we allow them to speak?
Oh, here's one in the chat that just came in from Brent. How do you feel about reusing aluminum bolts?
I try not to as much as humanly possible. I have certainly, but usually in a pinch. But 95% of the time I'll reorder them if it's spec that need to be reordered. They're all technically kind of torque to yield anyway, so unless you get them exactly where they were, I wouldn't trust it. But I have been caught in a pickle where I have had to reuse them before.
That might be it. Anyone else have any questions? If you want, you can unmute your line, or oh, here's another one. What is the garden idol in the corner?
So the garden idol in the corner, let me flip this back around. So the idol in the corner is actually 2 pieces. So that is a Humpty Dumpty that a buddy of mine gave me that he found long ago. And then sitting next to it is actually a stand-up of my mom. She passed away many years ago, and she kind of oversees shop operations to make sure I'm fixing things as I should. So that's kind of the folks that keep an eye over the shop. But yeah, it is Humpty Dumpty.
Very good. Any questions out there for Jim, our first presenter?
Paul, there was a question that came in for, I guess, both speakers about wheel and tire storage. Any thoughts on that from for Jim or James?
Well,
I need more of it.
I leverage the corner of the garage where I have a dolly, so if I need to move them some out of the way, I can. And the I think the tire covers came from Bimmer World, but that's one set effectively that I store.
Yeah, I tend to do the same. I'll stack them vertically. Old tires and older wheels will just end up outside. Eventually, I do want to do the kind of the side, you know, the tire racks, the tire shelves. You can just slide them in left to right, but just not there yet.
Any other questions? You can either unmute line.
I think somebody had asked earlier about the e-golf. It still exists, but it was relegated to outside.
Well, guys, I feel totally inadequate, obviously, with these 2 garages here. I mean, this is about as good as you can get. I would love to see more members' garages. And if you guys have any people you want to submit, or you want to submit your own, if we get enough people, we can always do another webinar for garages. But I will make sure that over the next day or so, I will try and get the slides out to everyone, a link for the recording, and anything else I can think of before. If there's any questions that you guys have, I think we answered everything that I've seen. Todd or James or Jim, do you guys have anything you want to add to the end here?
No, thanks for participating, and I hope that everyone got something out of it. If not a tip, some entertainment value, as the case may be.
I'll agree with what Jim said on that. Yeah, this took a long time to build. It's been a dream of mine for a very, very long period of time. But you know, it's definitely a hobby, that's for sure. And yeah, thank you all for letting me show it off. I appreciate it.
It's a sickness, James.
It is a sickness. Every time I buy something else that's broken and I bring it in here, I said, this is not normal.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank both of you, both phenomenal jobs, incredible garages. I think, as we, touched on the theme at the beginning, in this particular virtual garage, episode, I think it was really cool to see how you built something from scratch, from the ground up. Yeah, both had a little bit, some different goals and a little bit, some different priorities and constraints, but really kind of building it, from the ground up. Did some of it yourself, also brought in some professionals for other things and friends. But yeah, I think it's phenomenal. A lot of great ideas. And as Paul said, certainly it gives everyone a lot to aspire to. So I really appreciate the time and attention and all the details that you shared with the tours.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys. And with that, we will call it a night. So look out for more details on some of the follow-ups that I mentioned earlier. And thanks for joining our M-Chapter call. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Good night.
Night.